Penn State basketball puts another piece of the puzzle together for the 2023-24 roster. We're already looking ahead to 2024 with this, Nate. It's basketball transfer season. Not surprising, another VCU Ram is going to be a Nittany Lion. Who do we have today?
Today, well, Wednesday night, very, very late, it was Nick Kern Jr., who is a rising junior. He's had 2 seasons in at VCU. And he's a wing. He's 6'6", I believe 190 pounds. Just kind of a classic 2-guard wing slash gets to the basket. Really athletic. Just appears to jump out of the building. So yeah, I mean, he's a piece, but he defends, right? Like that's kind of if you look at the first thing that stands out about him in terms of what people say and how he's perceived, it's that, I mean, he's kind of a lockdown defender, and he's a versatile defender. He can guard a lot of different positions. So yeah, it's an interesting moment, right, for Mike Rhoades at the beginning of his Penn State career, finding a team, right? Like getting guys into the program who fit from his former team, right, from VCU. And so you never expect that it's going to be a complete, right, like line change. It's not going to be 10 players that come with him,
right?
But you got Ace Baldwin on Sunday. That was a huge one for Penn State. That's a huge piece of what he wants to do here at Penn State. And now you add Kern to that picture and the potential for more. And things are starting to the pendulum is starting to swing, right? Back toward having a roster, having
players instead of not having players, which is where they were. So, and this is kind of what you talked about when we were talking at Mike Rhoades' press conference about, okay, you know, he's got like 2 players on the roster right now. Where is Penn State situated? And you said, wait a couple weeks and see what happens at the transfer portal, see what happens getting players on the roster. Now we have 2 of those pieces of the puzzle. How did Nick Kern get to Penn State? And obviously he went to the transfer portal and came to the Nittany Lions, but like, what was the kind of timeline here? And how much did Ace Baldwin affect his decision to come to the Nittany Lions in kind of your view of the situation?
Yeah, I think I think the Ace part of it was huge. I mean, I think he went into the transfer portal soon after Ace or right around the time of Ace. I mean, a bunch of those guys all entered right as Rhoades was being hired. I think it was 5, 6, 7 guys at VCU all hit the transfer portal at the same time. And some of those guys are going to end up elsewhere, right? They're looking around and they're going to find other spots. But yeah, Kern is a guy who, I think is close to Ace Baldwin, and there's a friendship there that, if given the opportunity to jump a level to get to the Big Ten and keep playing with your friend and a teammate who you've grown close to, yeah, it's a great opportunity, and it's one that I think Kern wanted to jump at.
So this is, you mentioned, just going back to our conversation with Ace Baldwin and what we talked about in that video of, you're not wanting to bring everybody over. You want to bring the players that are, ones that are valuable and can play on this level. So that is what Penn State got here in Nick Kern. This is not okay, we need bodies. This is a guy that can provide minutes and a integral part of what Mike Rhoades wants to do and set the tone for the new style at Penn State. Is that a fair assessment of what they're getting here with Kern? As far as like the defensive side, you mentioned that's a big part of his game as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think that he look, if Mike Rhoades and his system are predicated on defense and athleticism and playing fast and free and right, like all of those different things, this guy fits that. He is very clearly a guy that they valued early in the transfer portal. They identified early in the transfer portal as being someone who could help with those things. His stats last year, first of all, an important piece of this, I think that I have to mention is he was coming off the bench to start last season and then finish the season starting, right? So the last 19 games of the season, He was starting for VCU as it won the A10, as it obviously won the A10 tournament, and as it got to the NCAA tournament. He put up 5.3 points, 2.7 rebounds, and he hit 62% of his shots. Now, is he Andrew Funk? No, like that's not, let's just dumb it down in terms of like what the expectation should be here. This guy's not like a pure outside shooter. He's a guy who's going to score a lot of points at the basket, but as a result, he's going to have a pretty high conversion percentage because of that.
Yeah. With the situation with the other players that are in the transfer portal, Penn State's roster that haven't made a decision, how does Kern impact those players and maybe a perception of their fit on the roster? Because we talked the same thing about Ace Baldwin, Kanye Clary. There's a little bit of overlap there. Maybe they can play in the same court at the same time. Maybe they can split duties so Baldwin doesn't have to play 40 minutes a game. But how does Kern fit with some of the players that Penn State's probably trying to get back on the roster out of the transfer portal?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a one-to-one with Evan Mahaffey. I think certainly you look at their bodies, 6'6" versus 6'5", 190 pounds versus 200, something along those lines. So there's a little bit of a similarity there. Evan, in terms of his athleticism, right? Like how he, his length, right? I think that's a big part of it. Is just right. His arms are huge.
Very bouncy too.
Very bouncy, right? Like just all of those things. I think that Evan fits perfectly into what Mike Rhoades wants to do at Penn State. It's just a matter of, if you're Evan Mahaffey, do you look at this and say, oh, well, Nick Kern's good for 30 minutes a game, I'm not going to play? I don't think so. Like that's not what you're looking at here. The important thing to me right now, as I'm evaluating what Mike Rhoades and what Penn State are doing in the transfer portal, it's you got to get people to believe, right? Like you got to get people on board, and so you just got the A10 Player of the Year to believe, right? To buy into the vision of not just Mike Rhoades at VCU, but Mike Rhoades at Penn State, right? Can this work at Penn State? Can these things translate into the Big Ten? Ace Baldwin thinks that it can, right? He's that's clear from his commitment. Now Nick Kern's on board. You still have, like you said, Kanye Clary. You still have Demetrius Lilly. Can you start to sway the opinions and the belief and the buy-in of some of these other players? Whether it's other guys in the portal, certainly there's at least one more VCU guy in the portal that Penn State is targeting closely. I'm going to leave that for the premium side. You guys can obviously look at our stuff at On3 for $30 until August 31st. Little plug. There's others, right? There's other guys in the transfer portal, and then there's also Penn State's players, right? So you've got 3 Penn State players in Evan Mahaffey, Keba Jai, and Jameel Brown, who are also in the transfer portal and trying to kind of figure things out. So Can you get that collection of undecideds to buy in and to join those guys? If you do, you're off to a pretty good start, a pretty what I would evaluate as a fairly competitive team if all of those things broke in Penn State's favor.
That the transfer portal is just, it's magical is what it is. The ability to transform your team in just a couple of weeks with just a couple of players, from what was super optimistic, I think, even with the departures of the senior class for 2023, then the departure of what you had, the whole situation that we just went through with Micah Shrewsbury, and now on the other side of it, you're saying this could be a fairly competitive team if things break the right way in the transfer portal. I think that's the point. Like you're saying that there is a possibility where 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was a hard reset and everything was going to be kind of murky and maybe another rough start to the season. I just, the transfer portal is interesting. I do have to, before you jump in here, I do have to clarify one thing that I actually have to correct you on something, which I never do. But we actually have a better deal than that right now. Just announced today The Blue-White Spring Game Special, $10 for 4 months. So you get a discount on top of the discount that you were getting already. So sign up bluewhiteillustrated.com, $10 for 4 months of premium access. So you can see what Nate's talking about. Get that insider information, all that juicy stuff. So you were about to say what?
Yeah, it's all fluid, right? Like that's the whole point of all of this is right now, if you're looking at Penn State's roster, there are 4 players that you're kind of counting on. And even those 4 players, right? Like the funny thing about this, and I don't want to come across as being a buzzkill because that's not the intention of this, but it's also to get people to understand and recognize that just because a player doesn't go into the transfer portal on the front end of the process, it doesn't mean they can't change their mind later, right? So even Kanye Clary and Demetrius Lilly, neither of whom I'm expecting to leave, just because they haven't entered the transfer portal doesn't mean they can't or that they won't as things change. So right now it's like, if you're evaluating who's solid, who's 100%, it's Ace Baldwin and Nick Kern. It's the 2 guys who just committed over the last 4 days. But then you would add to it and you would say, okay, Kanye Clary, Lilly, those guys are as close to being sure things as you can get, right? That next tier down. Then you've got 3 players in Mahaffey, Kebajai, and Jameel Brown, who, we'll see, right? You're just kind of playing that game, but things can swing kind of dramatically based on even within those 3, right? If you keep Jai and Mahaffey but lose Brown, that's different from keeping Brown and Mahaffey and losing Jai, right? Just based on the things that you need, the positions that you need to fill, et cetera, et cetera. So no, I mean, the whole thing right now, April 13th, is over the next 3 or 4 weeks, this is going to continue to swing pretty wildly, I would anticipate. And we'll be there for all of it. Another
great reason to like this video, subscribe to Blue White Illustrated on YouTube, and sign up at bluewhiteillustrated.com, because this is the information. I won't betray any trust, but Nate Bauer is the guy that's connected. He is the guy that's going to get you the information before anybody else, or pretty damn close to before anybody else. So in all this volatility, the rock for you for Penn State basketball information is Nate Bauer. Sign up now, bluewhiteillustrated.com. Once again, spring special, $10 for 4 months. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We will be back with the next breaking news, which can happen at any moment. It better not happen this weekend. Also, that's all I'm saying, Nate, is it better not happen this weekend.
It might.
Okay, well, stay tuned. We might be a little bit late on that one. There's some other things going on Saturday. But we'll be back then. Talk to you later.